Hey, my name's Taylor Hamilton. I'm 30 years old, going to be a student, sort of self-employed as well. I got into LARPing, oh man, it had to have been around 2000, Vampire the Masquerade. And then from there it just kind of went into a series of more like intense LARPs and stuff like that, more things that were more physical than just sitting there and going rock, paper, scissors to determine whether or not I can, like, you know, hit somebody or cast a spell or whatever it was. Eventually I found Dagohir, which was pretty cool. But it was too combat based, too heavy into combat. And then I kind of gave up for a while, and then started again with a group in Milwaukee and found this one. So yeah. Well, the difference between, in this case, LARPcraft and stuff, between all the other ones I've done, well, if you're going just LARPs in general, you have stuff like Vampire Masquerade, which has no physical contact at all allowed. And for me, it was too unrealistic. Even, you know, obviously the suspension of belief with the vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, it was just still too far from reality for me. And so then with Dagohir, which was the next one I moved into, it was too combat based, you know, and there was the only role play was in between the battles or, you know, overnight stuff. And for me, that still didn't quite fit right because, you know, you got like the whole day, you're not fighting the whole day, you know. So then moved on to stuff like Belgarath and a few other ones, but they all seem to be either too much of one or too much of the other, or they limited you by a lot. And by that, I mean, like, you had to do only light taps only, and then you had to call your hit, and then if your opponent wanted to, they could be like, oh, deflect. And it was just like, oh, well, okay, then I hit you again. And it was just like, and the thing that attracted me to Dagohir in particular with the combat part was what you could actually do is what you could do. And this format with LARPcraft, I think, meets the close enough middle ground for that for me, that I'll be able to get and have the role play that I like and still have the combat I like, where I can use some of my actual skills instead of relying on what a piece of paper says for the most part. This character is actually new to any LARP. The name, the concept, the idea is all completely new. In fact, I sat there and stared at the screen when I was making this character. I was like, man, what is this history going to be? What am I going to do? So I came up with something I had never done before. My character has pretty much no background. Orphan, you know, he's kind of a jack of all trades type. He knows a little bit of things here and there. A lot of the other LARPs, I tend to stick to the pretty generic characters because they're the easiest to make for learning how to play the game. And unfortunately, I never really stick with the game long enough because I lose interest because it just didn't fit what I was looking for. So I would lose interest and move on to something else, pick some little quick mix character. This one I kind of gave it thought because reading the rules, watching the videos, I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to work with this one for a bit. There are some like airsoft stuff where you have characters and stuff. I have used the last name Algernai, the same as the last name for this character, for that event because I was part of the Middle Eastern group, so it kind of fit with the sound anyways for the name and stuff. But as far as LARP, true LARP goes like this, the character was probably staring at the computer, it was me staring at the computer for about an hour trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Do you think you have to have all the answers to your biography and all? Do you have to know all that right away when you come into a new game or as a new player?
I don't think you do. I come from a really heavy D&D background, in both playing and being a dungeon master, and I try to have the characters put emphasis on at least a minimal of a background. And I tend to give, extra XP for that at the start. But I've had people come and they're like fresh off the farm, they joined the military and, their whole army got decimated. They were one of the only survivors and they just kind of wandered on their own way and they don't really know nothing about the world and ran with it with their characters from there. I've used the same tactic myself. You don't strictly need a background. And it's one of the good things about LARPs is, while yes, you can have almost any background, but you can also work with pretty much no background. So, because as you play, you build up that background. The thing I like about LARPs the most is the fact that I can literally have the chance to be anything or anybody. And I have a tendency to say this rather often, actually, is that I firmly believe I was born in the wrong era. I'm huge fantasy buff, medieval stuff, everything. Like, I've always wanted to own my own castle, like a little true castle, not, the wood stuff that people that make that look like a castle. No, stone, mortar, built the original way, everything like that. Obviously, I probably wouldn't get away with having peasants and things like that, but it's a goal to aspire to eventually. And with this, it lets me be able to kind of live out the part that I technically can't do legally right now, which is hack at people with swords. And while that's not saying that I have that desire to actually do so, it lets me kind of step outside of the world I currently live in and be able to imagine what my life would have been like if I was born in the medieval days or the Renaissance, and again, depending on the LARP, whatever time period it works in, it lets me step out and see what would I have done if I was there. My friends and family, almost all of my friends like play stuff like Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. Quite a few of my friends LARP. My whole community is similar to this. They all do it to some extent of one or another, or multiples of them. Definitely say my dad would probably be trying to join in on this too. My mom, she's more the cheerleader type, so she'd probably be like, yeah, go get him, hack his freaking head off. Something like that. I really would try to get my little brothers in on this though too, because I'm pretty sure they'd like this. The first time I ever did a LARP was, the first time I ever did this kind of LARP, something I tend to call a battle LARP. It was the Dagohir, and my very first event was actually one of their yearly ones, Ragnarok. We had almost 2,000 people out there on the field, and I'm one army, and I'm in the front row, and I'm just staring at like hundreds of people across the field from me, and I'm just like, oh dear Lord, please don't let me piss or crap on myself. Because it's really intense when you look across 40, 50, 60 yards and you see this other group over there, and it's this huge group, and they're all just like, and they got their weapons ready and they're ready to charge, and you're just like, that adrenaline just starts to kick in, and you got that little bit of fear there. It's like, wow, man, can I get hurt? Well, no, it's foam. What the heck? And, and then everything gets going, and it's just like, you just move with it. Mostly because you get the people behind you pushing you too. So you don't have a choice of the matter but to go forward. But once you start going, it's just bam, and you forget everything else. You're in character. They call it like being in the zone. You're there, and it's who you are at that very moment. For people who have a tendency to be self-conscious, shy, introverted, they're not really people. Just do it. If you worry about what somebody else thinks of what you're doing, you're never going to do anything. You're never going to be able to have fun. You're never going to get out, and eventually you're going to be 70, 80, 90 years old, sitting on your deathbed, and you're going to be like, man, I wish I had done that. or I wish I'd done this, or this, or this, or this. And then the list is going to continue on and on because of all these things you didn't do because you were worried about what somebody else would think. Just get in and do it. With games like this, there's almost nothing you can do wrong. It's your imagination. Just let it flow. Everything you've ever thought would be cool to do, do it. Obviously within the rules and guidelines, but other than that, go for it.